Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Long Thing, where this week, I'm not going to lie to you, fans, we don't really have much else on our minds except John Wick. It's JohnWickapalooza, baby, this whole month. And we're going to start with this episode right here. We're going to do a little bit of news because there's something I want to talk to Mullen about, just quickly regarding the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. But mostly this will be John Wick oriented. Mullen, you don't mind, right? You're very excited for John Wick.
I'm very excited for John Wick. I have a lot to say about Mr. Wick working again. It's gonna be fun.
Yes, I can't wait, bro. I've been going down a rabbit hole because they've just releasing like clip after clip, and there's tons of behind the scenes stuff that you can watch. And usually I try not to because I feel like it ruins the action sequences and whatnot. But because they're so restrained and how they show it, it's just making me more hyped. I'm very excited. I might be more excited for John Wick than any of the Marvel things coming out this year. I've decided as we're ramping up to 24th of March.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Sorry for interrupting.
No.
That's definitely true. For some reason, I care more about the straight story going of John Wick than Phase 4, Phase 5. Definitely true.
Well, we'll get into it in a second when we talk about the movie we chose for our topic for today, because it's very much JohnWickapalooza orientated. But before we get to that, I just quickly want to talk to you about the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Words. Let me try that again. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the animated movie that's releasing in August this year. So they've released a trailer, and it's very much Spider-Verse inspired. The animation style is almost identical. The comedy seems to be going in the same way. What do you think? Would you go see a feature film animated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie as an adult?
No. I'm not a big Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan. I'm glad they exist. It's a lot of fun. The memes are amazing, and it has an audience. Obviously, I'm not one of those people. If you tell me about animated X-Men series, then I'm on board. But that being said, I'm also not a Spider-Man fan, and Into the Spider-Verse is one of my favorite movies. Okay, so maybe this movie changes my mind. We'll see how it goes along.
We'll definitely have to give it a bit. So interesting. What I thought was interesting is that it's releasing in August, and Across the Spider-Verse is releasing in June. And my question to you, Merlin, is do you think they're banking on people are going to enjoy Across the Universe and then they'll go see TMNT by default because it looks almost the same?
Maybe that is a strategy. Like,
yeah, you could.
If they're coming up across the Spider-Verse and looking for a new fix, then I think T is the way to go. I'm really glad that Across the Spider-Verse is coming out, but it's fucking great, man. This is the direction we should be moving in, like making movies art again. I can't believe it. I said it like that, but yeah.
It's interesting you say that because the guys who did Into the Spider-Verse in an interview said their main goal was to make every single shot of the movie pausable so it can look like a wallpaper on a desktop computer. That's what they were going for, and I think they succeeded. Like when you first see that, it's not janky. It's very quick stop and go animation that they use, and at first it like catches you off guard, or did me at least. But then after a while, there is a charm to it. There's a fast-pacedness to it that I think really works in the characters' favors as well. Also, animation just allows for ridiculousness, and a walking, talking, kung fu fighting, teaching rat is one of the most ridiculous things ever conceived. Let's be honest.
It's all people. Okay, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are teenage turtle boys. Okay, who thought live action for this idea was a good idea? I can't understand it. Spider-Man makes sense making it live action because for the most part his story is really grounded. You can even shoot it in New York. Just call it New York because it's just New York. Okay, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I guess, is insane because it's also just New York, right? But Spider-Man isn't a teenage spider boy. He is just a teenage boy,
There is a difference to it. So there's definitely a difference. I think animation will definitely work. So they're still planning a live action reboot for the Ninja Boys as well. But I don't know. I don't hate those live action remakes. I think those were the best possible attempts. The way they look, what they say, and what happens in the movies, all of that might be dumb, but the way they look, the animation, the CGI that they used, I think it looks cool. I really do. Shredder is a little bit too transformery in that live action movie, but the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles themselves, and then not so much teenage in that movie as well. They're like grown adult turtle boys.
Grown adult turtle boys. Here's the other thing. What counts as teenage and what counts as adult for a turtle mutant? Because these are humans mutated to look like turtles. These are turtles mutated to look like humans. Well,
that is very true. So they'll be like in their teenage, in their late 40s, or what would be a human's late 40s would be like 14 for them or whatever.
Maybe it's a thing like they go through like the entire puberty cycle in the first 3 years, and then an adult at 4, and then live for 100 years as an adult. I don't know, turtles. Okay.
Definitely don't know mutant turtle biology that well. That's true. That's neither here nor there, though. I think this is definitely for the kids. This is they're hoping to get parents in by getting them to take their kids to this, because it feels Nickelodeon-y. Even Raphael's turned down. He cracks a few jokes in the trailer, so it's definitely not marketed towards us and our peers, I think.
You say that, but the farther you go, the more you're pitching this movie to me.
I am a fan. I have hardcore nostalgia for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because I watched those original live-action movies back in the day. And my friends and I, we loved them. We used to reenact like little fight scenes. Everyone was a turtle. So I have mad nostalgia. There was also an animated TV show that ran when I was a kid and just couldn't get enough of that. Also, because TV, the way TV worked back in the day is if you missed an episode, then it was gone forever. There was no going to YouTube or DSTV backlog or Netflix or none of that. If you didn't see it on TV, it was gone. So maybe that's why.
No, not anymore. Nothing is gone forever now.
Well, you're always able to find it now. But I'm not going back and watching that now. I'll just keep the memories. I've tried going back and watching movies from my childhood, and it's a slippery slope. You should be very careful before you revisit movies from your childhood.
Certain movies still work. You know, you look at certain childhood movies and it's like, wow, this is actually really great. And even better now that I'm an adult, I understand what they're talking about.
That is true.
You know, the Disney Renaissance, a lot of it, you know, points in that direction. But yes, there's also, if you watch Power Rangers or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it's rough.
It's very rough.
It's patronizing and simplistic at the same time. Somehow, it is incredibly simple and still condescending about it because, you know, it's made for children. So that's how we go about it.
It's very, very true. Anyway, we digress. JohnWickapalooza, like we said, we're very, very excited. So we thought before we're going to start looking at the John Wick movies, because that comes out later this week, and then we'll do all 3 of them over the course of the next few weeks leading up to John Wick 4. But we thought, let's start with something that came before, because John Wick, and here's my thing with John Wick, is we're not going to talk about John Wick specifically, but I do want to say this in regards to the movie that we're going to talk about, is that the action sequences and the way they're shot in John Wick might not necessarily be revolutionary, but there's something that they do in it. Maybe it's the longness of their takes or something that just sets it above. Because this, what we have here today is 1996's Bruce Willis led Last Man Standing, which is a very obscure LA noir type movie, but also centers around a single gunman, not very tactical at all. Maybe it's that.
Oh, okay. So, Last Man Standing, you said noir film. I actually have it in my notes as a Dust Bowl Western noir. Okay, because him riding into town, you know, this stranger riding into this like desert town, and there's like this story going on. That's Western, and a lot of this is actually like Western styled stuff. But it's also noir because he talks to you and he talks about the dame and the money and the stuff like that. So actually, the style of this got like that first sequence where They established like the vibe of the movie. It really really spoke Dust Bowl noir. That's what I'm going to call it. But it's like straddling the line between a western and a noir film. Did you know this is a remake? Did you know this?
I did not know it was a remake. Are you
Yeah.
kidding me?
No.
A remake of what? Was the original one more famous or?
Yeah, it is kind of. Sort of. It's a remake of the 1961 Japanese samurai film Yojimbo. It's called. The samurai Ronin comes into a town. There's two gambling gangs, and after hearing what like the situation of the story is, he says they'd be better off dead. Both sides would be better off dead. You know that famous line from Last Man Standing? It comes from this movie Yojimbo.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a little remake, but the Ronin and the Lone Ranger like archetypes are really close to each other. So anything you can do with a Ronin samurai, you could do with a Lone Ranger cowboy as well. It really works for westerns. That he actually sued. This isn't the only movie that remade it. A Fistful of Dollars, made in 1964, was sued by the owners of Yojimbo because it just took their plot just straight up.
That's interesting. Yes, Hollywood and behind the scenes stuff. It's very,
That's interesting.
So, we have a little bit of a different opinion about this movie. Maybe again because I have nostalgia for this. I saw it as a boy, and there were no other action movies like this. Because I've always felt like we need more noir movies. We need more private eyes who drink too much and end up in fight scenes, and we definitely need more Ronin samurais just cruising the land, slaying evil. We definitely do need more of those movies. But then when you get it, you kind of see why it doesn't work, because this thing is long, bro. Yes, it's long.
I got to the 40-minute mark and stop. Stop the movie at the 40-minute mark. I'm just going to take a second. Take a second for myself. I was actually, the main thing from my side, I'm actually confused why you chose this movie for JohnWickapalooza. What is the reasoning behind that?
It's the lone gunman walking through 30 guys. Because there are tons of movies with a guy with a sword. Like, we could have done any Bruce Lee movie. But that's like Kung Fu, and although John Wick does a lot of that, it's the gunplay that makes John Wick, definitely. And in this, the gunplay, I don't know, the movie might be very long and it's quite boring, but that last fight scene in the hotel, I think that holds up quite well. And that's why I wanted to do this movie, because that's, like, you only get it once in this movie, but that's John Wick all the time. It's just him. It's like every action sequence. It's never just one guy he kills. It's always like 15 at a time.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was actually really confused why you chose this for John Wick, because this movie is actually like an inverse of John Wick. You asked why John Wick's action sequences work, and some of it is the long takes, and some of it is the choreography and the cinematography. You know, it's all those things. It's because they took a lot of time, because what they cared about in John Wick is the action, right?
Most definitely.
Yeah, the plot is kind of
secondary a bit.
Yeah, it's notorious for it. It's like this low level plot and then these over the top action sequences, you know. And it's not really like, not in John Wick 1, Neo level over the top. It's just clean. It's almost as if what is over the top about them is the attention they paid to them, rather than the spectacle of anything in it. You know, this is also a complaint I have about John Wick 3 versus John Wick 1. Is that in John Wick 1, because of the attention they paid to the action, there isn't like action straight up in your face necessarily all the time. They make smart shots. They hide some of it to like intensify the gore or the violence or whatever. While in John Wick 3, they just put all the action in your face all the time. But we'll talk about John Wick 3, the problem child.
We just can't help ourselves, man. we just want to talk John Wick so badly.
So badly.
But if we get back to this is also one of the only times, because what this movie does that other action movies at the time didn't do, is you actually see him shooting. And then you see the people getting hit in the same shot, which John Wick also has, Where action movies of the time was very much, you'll see your protagonist shoot, then you see a bunch of bad guys either running or ducking or whatever, then they'll shoot back, and you'll see your protagonist again, then he's dodging the bullets or he's ducking, then he goes back, he shoots, then you see the bad guys fall. But in this, you see the gun go off and the guy getting shot in the same shot, if that, yeah. And it makes a big difference.
Yeah, and you see him checking his magazines, you see him reloading. That's also important stuff like that. That when those things came up, I'm like, okay, well, that is Wickian at least. Having like bullet counts. Yeah.
A little though, I wouldn't have to say like his reloading is inconsistent in this, man, because you'll shoot like 1,000 bullets and then reload, and then you'll shoot only 2 bullets and reload. So that does happen where you won't find anything like that in John Wick. Like he either shoots a magazine. Like I said, man, I've gone down a rabbit hole, and people really care about John Wick, so there are thousands upon thousands of videos you can watch about kill counts, reload counts, bullet counts, correct stances John Wick takes. Oh, it's everywhere. And most of it, as far as I can see, is John Wick doesn't shoot more bullets than what that gun would have. And he sometimes reloads with ammo still left, but it will be tactical, or obviously no ammo. But in this, again, Last Man Standing is very much of the time. They don't care about things like that, but they also don't. He seems a little bit invincible as well, because John Wick gets shot. He just has badass armor, but this guy does not get shot ever. It's also a thing about 90s action movies that the henchman will never shoot him, but then the main guy will shoot the protagonist once in the arm or leg or something, just long enough to have a little monologue before he gets killed in whichever way he gets killed. And this movie also doesn't do that, and I appreciate that. That's why I think it's a little bit of a precursor towards what ended up being John Wick.
The conservation of ninjutsu. Okay, but I do, yeah. He does take a tilt, though. Like, he gets caught and they do, like, beat him up for it, but he does play them by the end, I guess. And by the real end, he's the last man standing. So, that's the name of the movie.
At least they lived up to it. They didn't lie.
No, that's true.
What this movie does have, and you pointed it out, Chin, and it's very true, I didn't think about it, is it has a fucking love story. Oh, it has a dame.
It actually has 2 dames, okay?
It does have 2 dames.
Yeah. And the dame he gets with, if I can say it so crudely, isn't even the dame that drives his motivations. Because if you look at the first, before he gets caught and tortured, that first section of the movie, his motivation, he will say his motivation is the money, that's what like motivates him. But when he rolls into town, the entire thing that started this drama is him looking at the foreign lady, the Mexican lady, and talking about her, and that started the drama, and it kind of also created the tilt, because what he wanted to accomplish in this town was to free her. That's kind of what his arc is. Sees her, he decides he's going to free her. He plays both sides, and money and a bunch of stuff happens, but eventually he reaches his goal. He frees her. He still thinks it's about the money, but that motivation doesn't last long, because he gets caught out by Hickey. Christopher Walken is always a win. And the finals, we go into the final segment where it is just to end this. That becomes the motivation by the end. He doesn't care about the money. He doesn't care about the girl. He just wants this ended. And yeah, by the end, Jericho has a population of 2.
Yep. Yeah, maybe not the best movie. Or maybe we'll do some other action movies in between John Wick. But I think, I don't know, John Wick definitely did change some things, even though it might not have revolutionized. It's not completely new, but it does do what these movies attempt to do far better. Also, John Wick doesn't whisper as much, and that helps.
It really does. People just talk. Just normal talking. There is like
some whispering, I guess, when it's appropriate, and there's some screaming when it's appropriate. Most notoriously, John Wick's scene where he goes from really quiet talking about why he cares about this entire situation, and then he ends up screaming at the end. So, there's like variation. This movie had a lot of whispering because in this movie the action isn't as important as the story. The action is just a tool to move the story along, because the main focus is Bruce Willis's character John Smith rolling into town, having a western adventure, and then at the end riding into the sunset. And the pitch for it, the original movie as well, Yojimbo, got a lot of like acclaim. The pitch of a Lone Ranger, or in this style, a noir guy without a conscience, rolling into the town, and the only people really existing in this town are two criminal gangs. There's no proper collateral damage as well. There's a little bit because the dames and the gangs also care about like each other, and you have the sheriff and stuff like that. So there is potential for collateral damage, but that's not the important part of it. Both sides are bad. It's fine if both sides die, and that like pitch for a story, that's actually really interesting. I would actually that would make a good, like, I would say about 7-episode series on Netflix as well. You could like really actually like pull it out if you wanted to create something bigger and larger about it. So the plot's not bad. Christopher Walken, always a win. The style is really, really interesting. The Dust Bowl Western noir like fusion, that is actually interesting. I would like to see people explore that as well. We don't really get things set in the past as much as I would like to, and it's like certain periods that people kind of like avoid because of certain reasons, I guess. But
that's very true. But do you feel like, and when they do visit those periods, it's always the things you don't want to see. Like they did the 20s in Gatsby, but I don't want 20s Gatsby. I want 20s mobsters. I want Prohibition. I want that. Give me that.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And this is like in that vein. Which is interesting also is that it's a mobster movie, but it isn't set in like Chicago or New York.
Or New York or Atlantic City or whatever.
Yeah, and that's what makes it that leans it more to the Western. Also being in Texas, in the West. So that also, but that removed. There's an important part of Westerns and cowboy literature in general, the idea of the Wild West, that these towns are so far from civilization that their protection and their law is left to them, and that can work out good or that can work out bad. And that is why Lone Ranger works, because he gets into a town, he learns what their situation is, who's in control, solves their problem, fights the bad guy of this particular town, and then moves on to the next, who has different situations and different problems and different ways of dealing with things than the last town, because they're so far from each other. So that isolation really, works for Westerns. And you see this in this movie. I once again say, this particular style and genre of this movie is really interesting to me. I'm not glad about how they did everything in it, but that's okay. By the end, like by the end of the second act, I started to feel a lot better about it as well. As the story started to move into place, as these plans. And then Hickey pitched up, and that's Christopher Walken. I'm like, okay, now I have to watch this till the end. So
you said in your notes that Hickey is built like John Wick. What exactly did you mean? Because I'm gonna tell you what it means to me. What it means to me is the reputation. You constantly hear about Hickey and how badass he is, and when he shows up, he is that badass. Is that what you meant, or did you mean like the archetypical?
No. And that's what I meant. I like dangerous characters talking about other characters being dangerous is a good way to establish like this hierarchy. They do that with John Wick. You have all these mobsters like shaking in their boots. Every time they talk about it, they go, "Oh," like they know. And Hickey is built up in that way, like everybody telling him about Hickey and telling him all these like little stories. That's kind of interesting. I think that's also a excellent reason the true opponent in this town for John Smith is Hickey. Hickey is the opposite, and that's how he's built up. And you get that the final showdown is going to be between John Smith and Hickey, long before, Hickey shows up, actually. And that's interesting. Like, I picked up on that. They keep talking about Hickey, so that's going to be the guy he has to beat. And it turns out the only special power Hickey really has is that he can sway a machine gun. That's about it.
But he's the best of the best
when
it comes to swaying machine guns. So that definitely helps. Man, John Wickapalooza, I can't wait. I can't wait for number 4. I think it's going to be a spectacle. We'll definitely be covering that day 1, without a doubt. But if you quickly add to that, do you think they purposefully... Do you feel any of the Matrix in John Wick? This is off topic, but just a question.
This entire month, the topic is John Wick, so Last Man Standing is off topic.
That's true.
Yeah, I do feel the Matrix, and that's an interesting thing to bring up because 1996 Last Man Standing with Bruce Willis has no Matrix in it. There's no Matrix.
No Matrix.
There's a zero Matrix in it. And
well, except maybe for the 2-gun thing, but that is also, it might be more... Because if we're doing proper noir, then you should have had a revolver, right?
Okay, yeah, but if you're a cowboy, then you can have 2 revolvers.
Yes, exactly.
That's fine. That's fine. So, what was the question?
Matrix in John Wick.
Matrix. Yeah, no Matrix in this, but a lot of Matrix in John Wick. For first, it's really hard not to think about Neo because it's Keanu Reeves, and Morpheus because he's a Baruch. Also, so they definitely make some kind of homage to it, I'm pretty sure.
It's interesting you say that. So here's what happened. From a rabbit hole in this, I know this. So the original character for John Wick was supposed to be 60 years old. So they can they can say, that was the original plan, so that his reputation and things would be that long-lived. But then the producer, the guy in charge of Thunder Road Pictures who made John Wick, he said, no, instead of doing that, let's get a younger actor to play a younger character, but then we'll get someone that has a long-standing and significant place in action movie history so that people will superimpose that onto the character of John Wick, which is just, the fact that they thought about that is movie magic to me, bro. I think that's so good. But that's exactly what happens. You see John Wick, you immediately think Neo, there's an expectation. Because he even looks the same. It's all black, long hair, although that didn't actually happen in The Matrix. He has short hair. But it's Keanu Reeves' face all over the show. So,
and his acting. So yeah, you'd think about Neo. You think about Keanu-ness. So that's actually, you described it as having someone with this like weight, and they'll have this expectation, and people can just impose their own, experience on it. That is very Keanu.
That is very Keanu. Would you consider him an overall action movie star though? Because Neo, obviously, and Speed to a degree, I guess. But Point Blank is Point Blank an action movie? Because I'm not so sure. People say it is, but I don't know.
It's actually really hard describing a movie as an action movie because ideally every movie would have some action in it. Action and drama and romance and comedy is actually tools that you can use to tell a story. A story can have a good mix of everything. And it is trying to pin things to certain genre, and the genres in this way is You hear what I'm saying?
I do hear what you're saying, but in the same breath, I feel like John Wick might then be the only real action movie because it fits all the things perfectly. There's a catalyst, but it's like it doesn't really matter. Like, you understand? Like in the first one, his car gets stolen and such, but it doesn't really. And there's no subplots. There's just a singular focus, and it's just this guy trying to get revenge for whoever offended him that week. So I think John Wick might be the only, because I'm thinking now Terminator 2, that's more sci-fi than it is an action movie. What else is there? Rocky is more, not Rocky. Well, I guess Rocky is a sports movie. Rambo is a movie about PTSD. Not by the fourth one. By the fourth one, it might just be a proper action movie. How would you classify the Fast and the Furious movies then, apart from being an absolute shit show?
Oh, goodness. They might be action. See, that's what I'm saying. So the first Fast and the Furious is action, but it's also a heist, right? They heist things.
That's very true. It's more a heist movie, yeah.
Yeah, and as a racing movie, that's also the other thing about it. They race, so it's a racing movie, but they do heist. They're criminals, so it's crime, maybe. And there's a lot of action, so action, maybe. But at this point, Fast and the Furious is kind of its own genre as well. You could probably say this is this movie is Fast and the Furious C. And the same way that I say something is Wickian, I guess. Yeah. Now, you could call certain things action. I wouldn't call Last Man Standing action, for instance. Even though there is action in it, it's more about the drama of the situation. You know, it's about the way this like society is set up. So for me, it was more about the drama than it was about the action. Especially because the way he engages in the story isn't like how Wick engages in the story. Because John Smith negotiates and he plays people and he lies and stuff like that. Where Wick shoots you, that is
no conversation.
No.
Especially at John Wick 2. I thought about this as well because I've been watching it on a loop in my house, all of them. In John Wick 2, when he tells Caspian after that lady killed, he's sent to kill Gina, the Antonio. And then when Caspian asks him outside, are you here working? He's like, yep. And the guy's like, have a good night. And he's like, yes, I'm sorry, I did. He could have lied and just walked away.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. He's like, nope, that is true. I did that. And then it's on.
Yeah, and it's on for long. And the first one as well, like the entire quarry was with Yosef. And he doesn't give a monologue. He doesn't give you deserve this, nothing. He just walks up, shoots him. It is, and once dead, no extra bullets wasted either.
Knowing like anger or what it is.
Classic action movie trope. Because his dad does when they shoot Willem the friend in the house. He shoots him a few times to show anger. But yeah, John Wick does nothing of that.
That's how cold he is, and that I think that is why we like John Wick, is because he does defy some like movie tropes and some even like things we would expect of ourselves. You know, he's kind of other even to normal people. The ground here is like world, and then he is kind of larger than life, and I think that's what makes John Wick 1 like stand out as much. A lot of things make John Wick 1 stand out of.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely get into it in fine detail when we kick off JohnWickapalooza, because this is a prologue. Chapter 1 will come next week, and then we'll get really into it. But it's absolutely true what you said. What I also like about John Wick, that Last Man Standing has to a lesser degree, but other action movies usually don't, is John Wick is not the only one in that world capable of that measure of skill. Like there's each one of the John Wick movies has like a little mini boss for him that might not be up to his level, but is close enough. By the third one, that guy, Mark DeSasco's character, he is like, him and John Wick are on par, I'd say, like tit for tat. And Halle Berry, obviously, but John Wick's not the only one.
Yeah, that is interesting. And you have Vicky in Last Man Standing.
Yes. But in normal action movies, it's just there's the protagonist and his skill outweighs everyone else by like a margin. Yes. So easily. No chumps, just chumps. Proper henchman.
Yeah, how smiley that Undertaker got by the end. So I just remember it. Jericho's population is 3. It's the Tavern Keith, the Sheriff, and that Undertaker.
And that Undertaker, yeah, also very noir edition. That guy never says anything, but is also used for the story. I don't know, I don't hate Last Man Standing, but I am glad that we have John Wick. The world is better off having John Wick, which is a weird thing to say, but it is.
It is definitely better off having John Wick. I don't mind Last Man Standing, and this is a 1996 Bruce Willis movie. it's Bruce Willis. You're gonna
You get what you pay for.
Yeah, you're gonna get what you get. I don't think you could really cast a lot of other people for this movie either. That's another thing I thought about it, because Bruce Willis, you can say a lot of things about him, but he's smoky. Like, his flavor is smoky, and that really works for the vibe of Last Man Standing.
No, I completely agree with that. That sounds right. Smoky is definitely definitely the correct term for what he does. Last Man Standing, as a side note, is also an interesting, because it is a little bit of an acting challenge for him. So Bruce Willis made his big debut in a TV show called Moonlighting with Sybil Shepherd. So what happens in Moonlighting is Sybil Shepherd's this rich lady. She loses all her businesses and money through someone embezzled. The only business she has left is this PI firm that she invested in back in the day because it was part of a portfolio. And it's solo run by Bruce Willis, which is he's like a slob. And then she goes to him and she's like, "Oh, we're going to build this business back up so she can buy more businesses and get her money back." And it's very procedural cop show. They do investigation hijinks together, and it's very funny. And in that, he's a fast talking, whiskey swirling, cigarette smoking charmer, versus this PI, which is just a bit. This guy's cold and calculated and in it for himself and the money, and doesn't really have a conscience. Because the dames might be more of a distraction to him than actual motivation. They might just, because it's fleeting, because he gets over it. By the end, he doesn't care. He's just like, "I'm done with this. I want to leave."
Yeah, I think maybe this is kind of the Lone Ranger problem as well. Why would a Lone Ranger help at a random town? How do you anchor that in, type of style? And how do you have him leave if it's over? And I think I haven't studied a lot of Lone Ranger. I'm just thinking about this now. You have this character. He has a fleeting motivation. He has to have a fleeting motivation because he just came out of nowhere, decided to leave, decided to stay for this problem, to solve this problem, and then leaves afterwards after it's resolved. I hear you, because he doesn't get on the bus with his dame. Although he does go to Mexico, so you can imagine him looking for, what's her name?
I don't know.
Doyle's girl.
Doyle's girl.
Yeah, I think would be the first. And she's important because, as I said, she creates the inciting incident. She walks across the street. He looks at her. The gangsters don't like that. He talks a bit noir style about it. She's the dame. He talks about it, is it? And then he frees her, and that's what makes Doyle go off the rails. So she's important. She's kind of a MacGuffin, maybe.
Yeah, a little, because she's not fleshed out. You don't find out where she comes from, how she ended up in that situation. Maybe you do, but through all the whispering, I couldn't hear it. So.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure that you explained that part, but also the whispering, it was rough, so I didn't catch everything about it. I just catch the general vibe of this movie. Yeah. But yeah, that's mostly what I have to say about Last Man Standing. Do you want to talk about John Wick some more?
I do want to talk about John Wick some more. So I do have a little bit of a concern for John Wick, because in the past, movies shot back-to-back usually don't work. The most famous examples, Back to the Future 2 and Back to the Future 3, where there's a significant drop-off in quality and storytelling in Back to the Future 3 because they shot those movies back-to-back. The only time I know of that it's actually worked is Lord of the Rings, because those movies were shot as one and then divided. Where Infinity War, Endgame, sorry to interrupt you, was also shot back-to-back, and you do notice it. And my concern here is John Wick 4 and 5 are also being shot back-to-back, which is, I don't like knowing that going into 4. But again, John Wickapalooza, baby. I'm not that worried.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought up Lord of the Rings, because, yeah, it's a good example of a movie shot back-to-back. And they did it like the book. They made one thing and then split it up into 3 things. And that I do like that. I didn't know it's going to be back. You said 4 and 5. John Wick 4 and 5 is back-to-back.
Yep, it's being shot back-to-back.
Okay, yeah. So we're getting a Breaking Dawn.
Exactly. Another great example.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that is alarming. But see, the other thing about it is John Wick 3 didn't want me to get back into John Wick. Let me tell you that. If it was only John Wick 3 in this franchise, I wouldn't have continued watching. John Wick 1 and 2 and how I feel about those two movies is what's carrying me forward, and it's what's making me excited for 4. I hope they learned their lesson in 3 and realized what the problem is, or at least decided that 4 is going to be a different genre than 3, because I do not like 3. I like it, but compared to 1 and 2 and what they did there, John Wick 3 just feels messy. It feels cluttered and bloated. So I'm hoping John Wick 4, also having like a proper goal now in mind, would be good. I think that's good, and that might help the movie like have direction, because John Wick 1 is really, really focused.
It's very focused. It's very clean. John Wick, above all else, for everything that it does right, proves, I think, that if the people behind the scenes are passionate about their project, your end result, it's tangible, because you really feel the forethought and the amount of effort, because the fact that it's Keanu Reeves doing everything makes a big difference, because your mind does pick up on when there's cuts. Because if you see a Harrison Ford, this is my concern for Indiana Jones 5 as well. If you see a 7-year-old Harrison Ford running around and it's very clearly not Harrison Ford's body, like, you notice it. But in John Wick, you're never distracted, you're never taken out of the immersion, because it's always Keanu Reeves. It's always Keanu Reeves shooting, it's always Keanu Reeves running.
Yeah, it is impressive. I would give this to Jackie Chan as well. But it is impressive when they do their own stunts, because you don't have that split, because sometimes it's done badly, like you said, and you notice it's a different actor, or the cuts are so jumpy that you don't even take in the action properly. John Wick is more like, we're really proud of this action. Here it is, crisp, in your face, duidelijk. I don't know what's the clear, what's going on, and they put it front and center. So much love into that movie, and as you said, it's tangible. You see it. You know when somebody cares about a movie or a story, because they put the extra effort in putting those little details, getting things right, creating symmetry in a shot, or informal symmetry, or contrast, or all that pretentious process words. I'm just saying it.
But it's true, though. It is very true. You do. We'll get really into it when we get into John Wick 1, because I know you have a big thing about that club scene. But that club scene especially proves that. But we're not going to talk about that yet. What I do want to talk about quickly is, how do you feel about the planned John Wick spin-offs? So we're getting a movie, Ballerina something, which is going to be Anna de Armas. She's in The Grey Man, and she's in... What else is she? She played Marilyn Monroe in that latest Netflix Blonde movie. So it's going to be her doing something. And then we're getting a spin-off TV show called The Continental, which will focus on Winston as a young man building up the Continental. Which I don't, because I thought the Continental was part of the table, but it seems like they're separate things. Like Winston started the Continental, and it's completely his own thing. It's like his own little realm. It falls under the table, because they will probably explore this in the series. At some point there must have been conflict, and then they integrated. But it seems like they're gonna go with Winston is it's his little realm and things. Because John Wick also, this is something that they do in John Wick a lot, is they'll introduce something and then say nothing. Like the gold coins in number 1. It's just there, everyone uses them, and I really dig that. And I think now they're starting to explore the world a bit more, which is... It's a yes from me. I'll definitely watch that. I love John Wick's world.
I love the mythology, and it's really intriguing. And then the way the first one and even the second one keeps things so close to the chest, like how things work and everything like that. You don't even learn about the high table in those first one. We learn in the first one that there is this underground criminal world, and they have rules and whatever. But by the third one, we learn they also have judges for these rules. That is, you can't even call them outlaws. They're more like alternative laws, really. at this point, having all those rules. But I do enjoy that about John Wick 1, and I think that there might be some interesting stuff. The Continental might be like the Bowery King and the Belarusi, that they're like, each one has their own organization, but everything happens under the table.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it might be more like that. Do you think adding more, like, proper exploring the world and the mythology might ruin some of the mystique in John Wick, like, going forward? Like, at some point, it's like where we are with the MCU now. There's little to no mystery left, and it's not doing well. It's suffering for it. Ant-Man's reviews are not looking good. I think there's a lot of hope on Guardians to bring it back, but the last few movies haven't done so well. Do you think John Wick is in risk of the same thing happening to it?
Not for a very long time. I don't know how much space they have. They'll know it better than I do. How much of this lore and like story they have. The spin-off, like cinematic treatment, I'm not sure about that. Maybe it will work, maybe it won't. I'll have to wait and see. I'll refrain my judgment for it, like, for later. My knee jerk is why, but maybe they have a good idea. Maybe they can work it out. We'll see about that.
You make a very fair point, though. If it's being made because there's an idea, that's one thing. But if it's being made just because they have this, because the other thing about action movies is they don't make a lot of money. They're not billion-dollar enterprises. All 3 John Wick movies together have only grossed about 600 million, which is like, that's one MCU or one DC or one Star Wars. Hell, that's one Disney animated movie. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's still very niche. So there is a risk, I think, of them going, we can really cash in on this now because it's John Wick and it's this thing, it's this phenomenon. And if they're making it for that reason, then it might go south. Because it only takes one line of dialogue, it only takes one scene, we've seen this in Star Wars, to completely ruin something.
Oh, it does. It really does. I just thought about it because John Wick is so flawless. Even the third one that's ridiculous is there isn't anything that makes me go, okay, no, I'm done with this. I'm done with this. But Star Wars had a moment where I had to say, I'm not going to watch this movie because gross. The sequel trilogy broke my heart. What a mess. What a absolute mess.
If we ever work through our tears, we might do some Star Wars. But it's the same problem with Game of Thrones. Rewatching Game of Thrones is a treat. It's still very good, but knowing how it ends ruins it. Like, you can't get past season 3 if you try and rewatch Game of Thrones now. Because you'll be really into it, and then you'll immediately remember, oh yeah, right, this is how this ends. Yeah. And then you'll stop.
Everyone you care about, like, will die. All the characters you thought are interesting die long before the end. And then the few characters that are over, the interesting characters that are over by the end become cliches. They become the chosen one. John Wick becomes the chosen one for all the like genre breaking like nonsense they spout about Game of Thrones. John Wick is the chosen one. What? And he even comes back from death. He has plot armor. He literally has plot armor. I'm gonna go into a tangent here. So let's just bring it back. It's John Wick.
It's JohnWickapalooza, baby. It is indeed. I think that's enough, right? I think if we go from here, we're going to get into our John Wick content and we'll save that for the videos because, again, we're very, very excited. And if you're very excited for John Wick 4, please leave us a comment down below. Talk to us. Come back for the John Wicks because we're going to go deep. We're going to go deep into John Wick and what it is and how it was made. We're going to do all of it. Merlin, thank you for joining me. It's been a blast. See you next week.